Growing up in the 1980s and 90s, I was drawn to arcade racing games. Sega, of course, had their classic titles like Outrun, Daytona USA, and Sega Rally. But companies like Namco and Midway had some games very much worth playing as well. There definitely was no shortage of stuff to choose from. Josh Prod Games and Pixelheart wanted to capture some of the essence of those games with Arcade Racing Legends, a Kickstarter-backed product that would be made for Sega's Dreamcast. I featured an early beta version on my channel a while back, and things have come a long way since. I now have a final version to review, and in this episode, we're going to take a look at it and see if it's worth the $40 for a physical version. Arcade Racing Legends has a few different modes to choose from. The arcade mode takes center stage here, mainly because you need to finish each track in first place to open it up and use it in the other modes. Here you'll face anywhere from 3 to 5 other cars in 3-lap races. Come in second or worse, and you'll need to try again because the track remains locked. The time trial is basically a simple practice mode where you don't have to worry about the AI and can run infinite laps. And it has something called Duel, which is a split-screen mode for 2 players. The career mode gives you a mission-like structure to races. It can be anything from simply avoiding a crash, to racing a certain number of opponents, to completing laps within a certain time limit. All of these modes have access to your garage, which is loaded with cars inspired by racing and driving games you loved as a kid. Scrolling through the lot, you see similarities to games like Outrun, Sega Rally, Ridge Racer, Cruisin' USA, Daytona, Crazy Taxi, and even a few inspired by movies like Batman and Back to the Future. Each car can be tuned to your liking. You can adjust steering sensitivity, the braking power, and grip of your tires. This can make for a pretty potent difference, and I do recommend playing around with it. The gameplay itself mostly feels like it's loosely based on Sega Rally. It has a similar grippy but slippery style to it, but again, this can be adjusted in the settings to your liking. The visuals of this one have come a long way since I first played that beta release. The performance is smooth for the most part, though you do see some hiccups here and there. The stage layouts do try and give you some variety. You get deserts, forests, cities, islands, and snow-covered landscapes to race on. There's even a track that is set completely in an underwater tunnel. Most of these areas look good, but are fairly sparse on the bells and whistles. There's not a lot of stuff going on around you, and the few set pieces you do get don't often stand out or aren't animated enough to grab your attention. There are also a few eyesores here that are a bit off-putting. The details on the road itself are drawing in right in front of you, and there is quite a bit of polygon pop-up as the track comes into view. Even with those weaknesses, some of the car models still look great, everything is colorful, and it remains nice and smooth most of the time. It won't make any best graphics lists, that's for sure, but it's a strong step up from earlier indie level development. The soundtrack here tries to give you something worthwhile to race to. The games that inspired it had some of the most iconic music from our childhood, so it had some pretty big shoes to fill. While it of course doesn't reach the same level of those classics, the stuff here isn't too bad. I have a few examples so you can make up your own minds. Coming into Arcade Racing Legends, I feel you are best served by tempering your expectations. This is a crowd-funded indie title, not a big-budget project created by Sega's best. Pixelheart and Josh Prod set out to give you a respectable new Dreamcast game that had lots of nostalgia, and for the most part, I think they succeeded. Arcade racing games back then were often super simple affairs meant to give you 3 or 4 minute bursts of fun. Arcade Racing Legends accomplishes this. It definitely has its problems worth talking about, however. The first and most major issue is that all the cars feel the same in regards to handling, acceleration, and top speed. You can tweak each one to feel slightly different in the handling department, but they all still have the same top speed that can't be changed. This makes most of the vehicles cosmetic choices primarily, unless you purposely change the settings to make them more difficult to control. And speaking of cars, you only ever race against a handful at a time. Later stages see as few as 3 opponents on a track against you. I'm not sure if this was done to keep performance in check or what, but you often feel alone out there. The gameplay can also be wildly inconsistent. Sometimes banging against the wall slows you down, sometimes not. Tapping an inside wall tends to do little to impede your speed, while you need to really grind on an outside wall to slow you down. The AI-controlled cars also have that immovable object feel to them. You won't be wrecking these guys or bullying them out of the way. Hitting them results in you either slowing down or wrecking. Finally, the career mode grows tiresome quickly. Once the difficulty ratchets up, you won't be reset for touching that damn wall but so many times before you say to hell with it and are right back to the arcade mode. Overall, I'm fairly happy with how this turned out. It certainly has its issues, but I think it has enough good points to be worth a look for many of you. New Dreamcast games don't typically come along often, and usually when they do, they are low-budget offerings that are well below the quality you are used to. Here we have a racing title with a fully polygonal engine, no small feat for an indie developer on a small budget, creating for a platform that has been off the market for nearly 20 years. Racing around in vehicles that look like the cars from some of my favorite games has its appeal, and the gameplay is challenging enough to keep your attention for short stretches. Speaking directly to those of you expecting a grade A retail level product, I wouldn't recommend it. It feels low budget in many areas and does not in any way give the higher end racers on the platform any real competition. This one is solely for the arcade fans among you that enjoy a quick run here and there, or maybe a little split screen action with your friends and family. For that, it's definitely worth the $40 for a physical copy. For those of you without a Dreamcast, there is an enhanced version for the Nintendo Switch and PlayStation 4 planned for the future. I'm Sega Lord X, thank you guys for watching, and I will catch you next time.